Have you ever felt your emotions collapse under a weight no one else could see, as if the world moved faster than your ability to breathe? We all carry storms inside us, yet few learn how to stand through them. Today, we explore 10 quiet habits that turn inner chaos into clarity. If you're ready, walk with me. As we step into the first chapter, picture this. You open your eyes in the early light, and before your feet touch the ground, your mind is already racing ahead of you, scattering itself across a dozen fears and unfinished conversations. It feels as if the day has claimed you before you've even claimed yourself. There is a quiet panic in that moment, a sense that life is dragging you somewhere you haven't agreed to go. Yet hidden inside that chaos is a doorway the Stoics walked through every morning. A simple shift of attention that decides whether the day owns you or you own the day. Now imagine the mind as a room cluttered with worries that don't belong to you. Expectations from others, judgments from yesterday, scenarios that may never happen. You wake up already negotiating with ghosts. Have you ever noticed how quickly your energy drains when you start your morning fighting battles that exist only in your head? The Stoics saw this clearly. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed by the color of its thoughts," reminding us that the first thoughts of the morning stain everything that follows. And most of the time, those thoughts are about things we cannot influence. That's where the fracture begins. Here's where emotional strength is forged, not through force, but through clarity. There is a quiet discipline in stopping yourself and asking, before stepping into the noise, what here is mine to carry? It's a simple question, yet it cuts through the fog like a blade. Seneca said we suffer more in imagination than in reality. And isn't that true? Before the day even begins, we have already rehearsed the worst outcomes. We've already judged ourselves. We've already surrendered control without noticing it. Let me tell you a story. Years ago, I had mornings where I felt like a fire alarm going off. I'd wake with a knot in my stomach, thinking of what others might say, what might go wrong, what I might fail at. Then one morning, as I sat on the edge of the bed, a thought hit me with the force of unexpected honesty. None of the things I'm afraid of have happened yet. I'm living in a future that doesn't exist. That realization felt like stepping out of a room filled with smoke. Nothing changed around me, yet everything changed inside me. That was the first time I understood what the Stoics meant by reclaiming the mind. From here, the habit begins. You take a moment before speaking to anyone, before responding to anything, before opening your phone, and you draw a line. On one side, the things you can shape, your attitude, your choices, your effort, your presence. On the other side, everything that will unfold regardless of your worry. The weather, other people's moods, delays, opinions, the unexpected currents of the day. Epictetus warned, "If you wish to be free, do not wish for things to happen as you wish, but wish them to happen as they do." This is not surrender. It is strategy. It is emotional economy. It is refusing to squander your strength on what will not listen to you. At this stage, you begin to feel something shift. It's subtle, it's quiet, but it's real. When you stop trying to control what isn't yours, your mind becomes lighter. You breathe deeper. Your thoughts stop scattering and begin returning to their center. Suddenly, the day feels navigable again, as if the ground beneath you has steadied just enough for you to walk with intention. Think of someone walking through a crowded street. Without clarity, every sound, every bump, every expectation from others pulls them in different directions. They exhaust themselves reacting to everything. But with clarity, The same person walks through the same street with a different posture. Their eyes are steady. Their attention is deliberate. Their energy stays with them instead of leaking into the world. That is the difference between living by reaction and living by intention. But here's the truth most people never hear. Focusing on what you can control isn't about avoiding difficulty. It's about narrowing your field of responsibility so you can meet difficulty with strength instead of fear. It's about stepping into the day with both feet firmly under you instead of chasing things that refuse to be caught. This practice does not make life easier. It makes you sharper. It makes you quieter inside. It makes you stronger than the shifting circumstances around you. There's a moment everyone encounters when this habit truly reveals its power. It's the moment something unexpected happens, a harsh email, a disrupted plan, a cold look, a problem dropped at your feet. The old version of you would have spiraled, wasted half the day replaying it or trying to fix what wasn't yours. The new version pauses, breathes, asks the same question you started the morning with. What here is mine? And in answering it, you preserve the energy that once slipped through your hands unnoticed. This is where emotional mastery begins, not in dramatic victories, but in small, invisible acts of choosing where your mind goes. Calm isn't an accident. It's a decision, a trained one, a daily one. And when you make it each morning, you teach yourself not to be tossed around by the world. So tomorrow, before the noise rises, before responsibility floods in, sit with the question. Draw the line. Choose what belongs to you and release what doesn't. That single choice becomes the anchor that steadies everything else. And as we move forward, you'll see how this anchor prepares you for the next step. This is where the real inner work begins. Moving into the second chapter, picture this. A sharp word hits you, a tone you didn't expect, a moment that tightens the chest the way a sudden gust can slam a door shut. You feel the spark rise before you even understand it. Heat, tension, that familiar rush that pushes you toward a reaction you haven't chosen. This is where the battle begins, long before a single word leaves your mouth. Now imagine that spark expanding, like a flame reaching for something to burn. Have you ever watched yourself say something you knew you'd regret, even as the words were leaving your tongue? Have you ever felt the moment after the outburst, when the fire dies and the weight settles in your stomach? That brief collapse of "I didn't mean that." We've all known that moment. We all know how quickly emotion can take the reins and drag us where we never intended to go. And this is exactly why the Stoics guarded the space between emotion and action as if it were holy ground. Here's where their wisdom becomes real. Epictetus reminded his students, "You are not disturbed by events, but by your opinion about events." He wasn't lecturing them. He was giving them a key, because between the feeling that rises and the words that follow, there is a breath, a pause, a choice. Most people never enter that space. They react as if the emotion is the command and they are the servant. But emotional strength begins the moment you refuse to be dragged and instead choose to stand still inside the storm. Let's step into that pause for a moment, not as an idea, but as something you can feel. Think of a day when someone pushed you too far. They cut you off mid-sentence. They dismissed something important to you. They hit that old bruise you thought you'd outgrown. Your body reacted instantly. Shoulders tightened, voice sharpened, heart climbed into your throat. In that instant, reacting feels natural, even justified. But natural is not always wise. And justified is not always strong. This is where the inner pause arrives like a doorway, a small, almost invisible opening where you step back from the heat by a hair's breadth. Just enough to see yourself, just enough to ask, what is this really? Where is this coming from? And what response would I admire when the moment is gone? That question alone can change the entire trajectory of a conversation, because the pause cuts the chain. It stops impulse from becoming action. It takes the match out of the fire. I remember once watching a man in a cafe being confronted by someone who clearly wanted a fight. The aggressor was loud, frustrated, throwing sharp words like stones. But the man didn't react. He didn't shrink, and he didn't flare. He simply paused, looked at the person, breathed. His calmness didn't make him weak. It made him untouchable. The aggressor's anger had nowhere to go. It was like watching a wave break against a rock that refused to move. When the moment passed, the space felt different, controlled, clear, and it taught me something I've carried ever since. Silence used with strength is not the absence of reaction, it is the reaction. From here, the habit becomes something deeper than counting to 5 or stepping away, though those tools help. It becomes a way of walking through the world, of refusing to let your emotions choose your identity for you. The pause is where you reclaim yourself from the moment. It's where wisdom replaces instinct. It's where strength replaces impulse. But let's be honest, the pause isn't easy. It asks you to stand in discomfort without flinching, to witness your anger without obeying it, to feel your frustration rise without letting it spill. This is inner discipline in its purest form. Seneca warned that anger, more than any other emotion, makes us forget ourselves. The pause is the way back. A return to your own mind before you hand it over to the moment. At this stage, you begin to see the patterns that once controlled you. That surge you thought was uncontrollable becomes recognizable, predictable. You can feel it coming, the way a seasoned sailor senses a wave long before it rises. And that awareness changes everything. You don't fear the wave anymore. You ride it, you guide it. You choose where it carries you. Here's where a small truth becomes a powerful one. The pause is not about suppressing emotions. Suppression is pressure that eventually explodes. The pause is acknowledgement. It's the calm hand on the steering wheel that says, I see you, but I will decide. Emotion is not the enemy. Blind reaction is. Think of all the consequences avoided by a breath. All the relationships saved, all the regrets prevented, all the dignity preserved. Think of the opportunities created when you respond from clarity instead of chaos. The pause is more than a technique, it's freedom. Freedom from your own impulses. Freedom from being manipulated by the moods of others. Freedom from being someone you later wish you hadn't been. And slowly, the world begins to notice. People trust those who can stay steady when things get heated. They listen to the ones who don't react out of wounded ego. They respect the ones who choose their words instead of leaking them. Because the person who pauses becomes someone who cannot be provoked into losing themselves. As this chapter settles, remember this single truth that carries the weight of all Stoic wisdom. Strength isn't the force of your reaction. Strength is the silence that chooses the right one. And holding that silence is what leads us toward the next step. Advancing to the 3rd chapter, imagine this. You're standing in front of a mirror, not the one hanging on your wall, but the one you avoid inside yourself. The one that doesn't show your face, but your fears. The version of you that flinches at rejection, tenses at failure, and hides every bruise beneath a practiced smile. You know this mirror. We all do, and we all walk past it more often than we should. Now imagine that mirror calling you back one quiet evening. No drama, no audience, just the truths waiting for you in a still room. Have you ever felt that heavy tug when you know you're not being fully honest with yourself? A relationship you stayed in too long, a dream you abandoned too early, a habit that kept you small. It's uncomfortable. It stings. It burns in a way that makes you want to look away. Yet this is the doorway the Stoics stepped through again and again, the doorway of self-honesty. They believed that a person cannot be strong if they are unwilling to see themselves clearly. Here's where the heart of emotional strength begins, not in perfection, but in truth. Seneca wrote that no person becomes wise by chance. Wisdom requires confrontation, the willingness to meet the parts of ourselves we'd rather bury, because the pieces we hide don't disappear. They haunt our decisions, they shape our fears, they whisper in our ear every time we stand at the edge of something greater. And the only way to break their hold is to face them without running. Let's step into a moment I think every person recognizes. You make a mistake. Not a small one, but one that bruises your pride. Immediately two paths appear. One path is denial, excuses, blame. You tell yourself stories to soften the blow. It wasn't my fault. They pushed me into it. I didn't really care anyway. The other path is harder. It asks you to sit with the truth and admit, this was me. This was my choice. And I need to understand why. The first path feels easier, but it traps you. The second path hurts, but it frees you. Pain that frees is very different from pain that chains. I remember watching a friend go through a difficult season. He kept choosing things that harmed him and pushing away people who cared. When everything crashed, he sat across from me with red eyes and whispered, "I've been lying to myself for years, and I didn't realize how heavy the lie had become." That sentence, quiet as it was, carried a weight you could feel in your bones. But in that moment of naked honesty, something powerful cracked open. He wasn't pretending anymore. And because of that, he finally had something to build from. Truth may cut, but the cut is clean. Illusion rots. Here's where the Stoic lesson deepens. Epictetus urged his students, first know who you are, then adorn yourself accordingly. He didn't tell them to create a character. He told them to uncover one. To stand in front of that inner mirror without bowing their head in shame, because shame clouds clarity, and clarity is the root of all emotional strength. When you see yourself without distortion, you begin to understand the real reasons behind your choices. You begin to recognize the patterns that keep repeating in your life. You begin to rise not by dragging the world to your level, but by elevating the level you stand on. At this stage, honesty stops feeling like an accusation and starts feeling like liberation. You stop fearing your flaws because you finally understand they don't define you, they guide you. They show you where to grow. They show you where you've been wounded. They show you what needs healing so that you can stop repeating the same cycles with different faces. This is where the transformation becomes visible. When you're honest with yourself, excuses fall away. Self-pity weakens. You stop blaming circumstances for outcomes you shaped. You stop pretending that the world is against you and start recognizing where your own choices have led you astray. And most importantly, you reclaim the power to turn your life in a new direction. Nothing changes until the truth is faced. But once faced, everything begins to change. Here's a truth the Stoics understood deeply. A person who cannot face themselves will always struggle to face the world. A person who hides from their own truth will always feel hunted by shadows. But a person who knows their inner landscape knows where their strength lies and where their weakness waits. They may not be perfect, but they are grounded, solid, unshakable. The world cannot easily break someone who refuses to lie to themselves. Now, imagine ending your day with a moment of quiet reflection. No judgment, no harshness, just a calm audit of the soul. Ask yourself, where did I hold back? Where did I pretend? What truth did I avoid? And what truth did I finally face? These small moments repeated daily become a compass pointed inward, and clarity becomes your new language. From here, the weight begins to lift. You stop performing for others and start living for your values. You stop fearing imperfection and start embracing growth. You stop carrying the burden of who you think you should be and start accepting who you truly are. That acceptance is not the end of your journey, it is the beginning, because the person who is honest with themselves cannot be manipulated by lies the world throws at them. So let this chapter settle into you. Do not run from what you see in the mirror. Do not shrink from the truth. It is not your enemy. It is your doorway to strength. And as we move forward, remember this one line that holds the entire lesson. The truth you avoid is the weight you carry. The truth you face is the strength you become. Entering the 4th chapter, picture this. The day is finally quiet. The noise has settled, the rush has faded, and the world no longer demands anything from you. Yet inside, something still hums, a restless echo of everything you said, everything you felt, everything you didn't handle the way you wish you had. This is the moment most people run from, but this is the moment the Stoics walked toward. Now imagine the day as a long road you've just traveled. Dust on your shoes, wind on your face, footprints behind you that only you can see clearly. Have you ever noticed how rarely we look back at that road? How easily we move from one day to the next without asking what any of it meant? We think forward is the only direction that matters. But forward is blind without reflection. And the Stoics knew this. They believed the evening was the true classroom of the soul. Here's where the habit begins. You sit with yourself, not as judge, but as witness. Marcus Aurelius did this every night, not to scold himself, but to understand himself. He treated the day like a mirror, a place to study the shape of his actions, the tone of his reactions, the quiet movements of his intentions. He wasn't chasing perfection. He was chasing clarity. Because clarity strengthens the mind the way training strengthens the body. Let's step into that stillness for a moment. Think of the last emotionally charged interaction you had, a disagreement at work, a sharp comment from someone you care about, a moment of frustration you wish had gone differently. In the rush of the day, you moved on. But what if you paused now and revisited it, not with regret, but with curiosity? What stirred inside you? What fear was triggered? What truth did that moment uncover? Reflection isn't interrogation, it's illumination. I once had a mentor who ended every evening with the same quiet ritual. He would close his notebook, rest his hands on the table, and whisper to himself, "Where did I rise today, and where did I fall?" No drama, no exaggeration, just honesty. He told me once that this practice saved him from becoming someone he wouldn't respect. The world corrects you slowly, he said, but reflection corrects you tonight. I never forgot that line. It's the kind of wisdom that stays with you when everything else grows loud. Here's where the strength of reflection reveals itself. You begin to notice the patterns that shape your life, the habits of thought that push you toward anger, the insecurities that make you defensive, the fears that make you small. And once you see the pattern, you're no longer trapped inside it. Seneca wrote that no person becomes wise by accident. Wisdom is carved through observation, and reflection is the chisel. At this stage, something subtle happens inside you. You stop rushing to the next thing. You stop treating your days like items on a list. Instead, each day becomes a chapter you've actually read, not one you've skimmed and forgotten. You begin to recognize where you acted with dignity, where you held your ground, where you showed patience you didn't know you had. You also see where you stumbled. But even that becomes fuel, not shame, because reflection reframes failure as information. Now imagine ending your day with a small internal conversation, not harsh, not proud, just steady. You ask yourself, what did I do well? What did I avoid? What triggered me? What taught me something? These questions don't demand perfection, they demand presence. And presence builds emotional strength, brick by brick. Here's where an important truth sharpens. When you reflect, you step outside yourself just enough to see your life from the outside. You detach without disconnecting. You evaluate without attacking. You grow without punishing. This is Stoic self-awareness, not self-loathing, not self-defense, just clarity. And clarity is power. Think for a moment about how many unnecessary conflicts could dissolve if we simply reflected before repeating the same mistake. Think about how much guilt could fade if we acknowledged our wins instead of ignoring them. Think about how much resilience could grow if every day taught us something instead of slipping past unnoticed. Reflection is the quiet architect behind all emotional strength. From here, a new pattern begins to form. You navigate tomorrow differently because you understood yesterday. You approach conversations with more steadiness. You catch yourself before the spiral. You recognize the early signs of anger. You understand what kind of silence heals you and what kind of silence harms you. Reflection rewires the mind toward intentional living. And slowly, you become someone who sees their own life clearly, someone whose choices are deliberate, someone whose growth is visible, even if no one else knows how much work it required. That's the beauty of this habit. It doesn't make you loud, it makes you deep. As this chapter softens into its final note, remember this: the day is your teacher only if you let it speak. And your strength grows, not from living more days, but from learning more from the days you live. The person who reflects becomes the person who evolves. Entering the 5th chapter, picture this. You spend another day chasing something just out of reach, a goal, a person, a moment that you believe will finally quiet the restlessness inside you. But as the sun begins to slide down and the world softens, you notice something unsettling. The more you chase, the more you feel you lack. The more you grasp for what you don't have, the more invisible what you do have becomes. And in that blindness, peace slips through your fingers. Now imagine pausing right there, before the next ambition pulls you in, before the next comparison steals your breath. Have you ever asked yourself why the mind is so quick to catalogue what's missing, yet so slow to acknowledge what's already here? Why the heart can hold success, love, or comfort and still insist it's starving? We live in a world that trains us to sprint toward the next milestone without ever standing still long enough to recognize the quiet abundance at our feet. And this is where the Stoics drew a line. They refused to let life feel empty when life was already full. Here's where their wisdom begins to settle in. Gratitude, not the sentimental kind, not a passing moment of feeling lucky, but the disciplined act of noticing what is already yours. Seneca wrote that good character is shaped little by little, day by day. Gratitude is one of those chisels. It sharpens perception. It calms the hunger of always wanting more. It grounds your mind in the present moment, the only place where strength can actually grow. Let's step into a small moment. You wake in the morning and reach for your phone without thinking. A habit, a reflex, notifications, messages, news, all of it whispering you're behind, the world is ahead of you, catch up. But what if instead of reaching outward you reached inward? What if before the rush begins you named 3 simple things that already make your day abundant? It could be the quiet warmth of your room, the presence of someone you love, the fact that you have a chance to live another day with intention. These things seem small, but they are not small, they are foundations. I once met an older man who kept a worn notebook inside his coat. Each evening he would write one sentence in it, one thing he noticed that brought him peace that day, a cup of tea, a conversation, a moment of clarity. When I asked him why he did it, he smiled and said, "Because the world keeps trying to convince me I need more. This book reminds me I already have enough." There was no arrogance in his voice, just certainty. The certainty of someone who had stopped negotiating with the illusion of scarcity. Here's where the habit takes root. Gratitude is not passive. It is a choice, a warrior's choice, to focus on what strengthens you rather than what drains you, to see blessings instead of holes, to give weight to what is present instead of worshipping what is absent. The Stoics understood that a mind ruled by lack is a mind that collapses easily, but a mind anchored in gratitude becomes steady even under pressure. At this stage, something shifts inside you. You begin to notice how often the mind manufactures dissatisfaction, how easily joy is overlooked, how quickly your attention runs toward what is missing. But with gratitude, that direction changes. You recalibrate. You see accomplishments you never pause to honor. You feel the quiet stability you never counted. You recognize how fortunate you already are, even while striving for more. Suddenly the journey becomes richer because you're not walking with empty hands. You're walking with abundance. Now imagine expressing that gratitude outward. Not just feeling it, but sharing it. A thank you to someone who helped you, a note of appreciation, a kind word. Gratitude doesn't just strengthen you, it strengthens the people around you. It softens tension, it deepens connection. It creates a climate where resentment shrinks and warmth grows. Emotional resilience isn't built in isolation. Sometimes it grows strongest when gratitude becomes the language between you and the people you cherish. Here's another truth the Stoics carried closely. Gratitude is not conditional. It's not reserved for perfect days. It's not something you practice only when life feels easy. In fact, the practice matters most on the days when everything feels heavy. Because gratitude doesn't deny difficulty, it balances it. It doesn't erase pain, it reminds you of what pain hasn't taken. It doesn't cancel struggle, it steadies you inside it. From here, gratitude becomes a lens, not a task. You begin to see opportunities in setbacks, lessons in discomfort, growth in the places you wanted to avoid. You see that even on the hardest days, something remains a glimmer, a possibility, a small piece of good that refuses to be extinguished. And if you can see that, you can move forward without collapsing under the weight of what's missing. At this stage, the practice starts shaping your identity. You become someone who notices the quiet beauty others rush past. Someone who sees the value in simple things. Someone who doesn't crumble when life doesn't meet your expectations because you've trained your mind to find steadiness in what is already present. That is power. Not loud, not dramatic, but enduring. So let this chapter settle into you. Gratitude is not a soft practice. It is strength disguised as tenderness. It is clarity disguised as calm. It is resilience disguised as appreciation. And the moment you choose to remember what you already have, you stop living from scarcity and start living from abundance. Advancing to the 6th chapter, picture this. You're holding something tightly in your hands, a memory, a person, a version of your life you thought would last forever. Your grip is firm, your breath is shallow, and a quiet fear circles in your chest. You feel the weight of holding on, even though a part of you already knows the truth. Some things are meant to stay, others are meant to leave, and the moment you resist that truth, suffering begins. Now imagine that weight growing heavier the more you clutch it. Have you ever held on to something long after it stopped giving you peace? A relationship that dimmed your spirit, a dream that no longer fit who you were becoming, a path you outgrew but refused to step away from. It's a strange thing about loss. It arrives in many forms, yet it always leaves the same ache behind. But here's the quiet lesson the Stoics understood so deeply. Loss is not a punishment. Loss is the shape of life evolving. Here's where their wisdom starts to soften the fear. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Loss is nothing but change, and change is nature's delight." He wasn't telling us to suppress our grief. He was reminding us that everything we love, everything we build, everything we hope for is part of a cycle we cannot freeze. Life moves. We must move with it. To fight loss is to fight the rhythm of existence itself. Let's step deeper into that truth. Think of the last time something slipped out of your hands, a job, a friendship, a sense of certainty. At first it felt like the ground cracked beneath you. You questioned everything. You wondered why life was taking instead of giving. But look closer now with the clarity of hindsight. Did losing that thing break you? Or did it quietly redirect you? Did it crush you? Or did it carve you? So often, what feels like the end is simply the beginning disguised in discomfort. I once spoke with someone who had lost nearly everything in a single year. Work, relationship, plans, the future they imagined collapsed in on itself. They told me, "I thought my life was ending, but now I see it was just changing shape." There was a softness in their voice, not from weakness, but from acceptance. They weren't holding the ruins anymore. They were building something new. That is the art of letting go, not erasing the past, but refusing to be chained to it. Here's where the heart of this practice reveals its strength. Letting go does not mean you stop caring. Letting go does not mean you forget. It means you choose not to carry what has already left you. It means you release the need to rewrite the past. It means you refuse to let grief turn into chains. Seneca taught that we suffer greatly when we cling to things not meant to stay. And isn't that what we do? We grip memories so tightly that they cut our palms. We hold expectations so firmly that they suffocate our present. We stay loyal to what has already walked away. At this stage, letting go starts to feel less like a battle and more like a surrender, a peaceful one. You begin to recognize that some doors are not closed to punish you, but to redirect you. Some endings are not losses, but openings. You start to trust the movement of life instead of resisting it. You understand that pain is real, yes, but so is renewal. Now imagine loosening your grip just a little. Imagine acknowledging that you cannot control everything. Imagine letting yourself breathe again. When you let go of what no longer serves you, something remarkable happens. Space appears. Space for clarity. Space for peace. Space for new opportunities you couldn't see before because your hands were full of what was gone. Let me ask you something quietly and honestly. What are you still holding on to? A person who stopped choosing you. A dream that no longer feels like yours. A story you keep replaying because you're afraid of writing a new one. Holding on does not protect you. It preserves the wound, but letting go frees you to heal. Here's where another truth deepens. Letting go is also about releasing the need for validation. How often do we cling to relationships, titles, or successes because they shape our identity, because they make us feel worthy? The Stoics would call this a fragile foundation. True strength comes from recognizing that your worth is not dependent on who stays, what you achieve, or what you've lost. Your worth is inherent, unshaken, untouched by circumstance. From here, letting go becomes an inner liberation. You stop forcing life to fit your expectations. You stop begging for things that have expired. You stop defining yourself by what slipped away. Instead, you begin to meet life as it is fluid, shifting, unpredictable, but also generous, forgiving, and full of second chances. As this chapter settles into its final breath, remember this: loss does not break you. Loss clears the space where your next strength will grow. When you release what no longer belongs in your hands, life places something better in them. Moving into the 7th chapter, picture this. You're moving through your day like someone being pulled by invisible strings, tugged in every direction by obligations, expectations, emergencies that aren't truly emergencies, and voices that grow louder the more you ignore your own. You look up at the end of the day and realize something unsettling. You were busy, exhausted, constantly in motion. Yet somehow nothing important moved at all. Now imagine that realization hitting you with the quiet force of truth. Have you ever felt that you spent an entire day responding but not living, serving noise instead of purpose? You answer every message, solve every problem, say yes because it's easier than bearing the guilt of saying no. But while you're tending to what others insist is urgent, the things that matter most to you silently starve. This is the hidden cost of misaligned priorities. The Stoics saw this clearly. They believed that a life without clarity collapses under the weight of unexamined obligations. Here's where their wisdom cuts through the fog. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that we are disturbed not by external events, but by the value we assign to them. And what is a priority if not an expression of value? When you don't decide what truly matters, the world decides for you. Your time becomes a public resource. Your attention becomes currency for everyone but yourself. And your energy slips into the cracks of distractions designed to look important but leave nothing behind. Let's step into a moment that most of us recognize. You open your calendar and the page is full, but not full of your purpose, full of tasks, commitments, obligations, appointments that drain you, must do, should do, was asked to do. How often does your calendar reflect your values? How often does it reflect your fears? The fear of disappointing others. The fear of missing out. The fear of being judged for doing less, even when less would mean living more. I once knew a man who was admired for being always available. Whenever someone needed help, he was there. Whenever someone called, he answered. Whenever someone asked, he complied. But one evening, as we walked together, he admitted, "I'm exhausted by the life people think I want." That sentence carried the weight of years spent serving every demand except the demands of his own life. And in that moment of honesty, he realized something he had avoided for too long. He had mistaken activity for progress. Here's where the real transformation begins. Emotional strength is not just about handling hardship. It's about choosing what deserves your strength in the first place. It is about having the courage to say, not this, not anymore. My energy goes where my values go. Seneca believed that distracted souls drift through life without ever arriving. But the person who sets clear priorities walks with intention. Every step matters. Every choice becomes deliberate. At this stage, the question becomes sharper. What is truly worth your limited time? What will you never regret giving your energy to? What aligns with the person you are becoming, not the person others expect you to be? These questions are uncomfortable only to the person who has forgotten their own values. But once remembered, they act as a compass. They cut through noise like a blade. Now imagine trimming away tasks that don't reflect your purpose. You say no, not because you are selfish, but because you finally understand the cost of saying yes. You choose depth over busy work. You choose quality over chaos. You choose to honor your internal mission instead of reacting to everything that calls your name, and slowly the world begins to reshape itself around your clarity. Here's a truth worth carrying. Priority is not about choosing what to add. It's about choosing what to release. It's about refusing to become a servant to noise. It's about protecting your finite energy with the same seriousness the Stoics protected their inner peace. Marcus Aurelius wrote of the importance of focusing only on what is essential and discarding the rest. That lesson remains undefeated, because when everything is important, nothing is. From here, clarity becomes your shield. You begin listening to your energy instead of your guilt. You start aligning your days with your values instead of your fears. You pour yourself only into what grows you, strengthens you, and moves you toward the life you truly want. And as you do, a strange peace replaces the constant rush. You no longer feel pulled. You no longer feel scattered. You no longer feel like your life is slipping out of your hands. At this stage, saying yes becomes sacred, saying no becomes strength, and choosing carefully becomes a form of self-respect. You realize that your days are the building blocks of your existence, and what you give them to is what your life becomes. Purpose is not found, it is protected. So let this chapter settle deeply. Your time is a non-renewable resource. Your energy has a limit. Your attention shapes your destiny. And the moment you set clear priorities, you take back the power that distraction has been stealing from you for years. Focus on what truly matters, and everything else will fall into its rightful place. Entering the 8th chapter, picture this. You walk into a room carrying nothing but your own thoughts, yet within minutes you're carrying the weight of everyone else's emotions. Someone's anxiety clings to you, someone's frustration leaks into your mood, someone's bitterness shadows your entire afternoon, and suddenly, without meaning to, you're living a day that isn't even yours. This is what happens when the world enters your mind without permission. Now imagine stepping back from that scene and asking yourself a simple but piercing question. How many of the emotions I feel actually belong to me? We absorb so much without noticing. A colleague snaps and your chest tightens. A friend worries and your heartbeat rises. A stranger's irritation shifts your whole internal climate. And in those quiet moments of entanglement, you stop being the guardian of your inner world and become the sponge of someone else's storm. The Stoics warned against this. They understood that an unprotected mind is the easiest to wound. Here's where their wisdom becomes a shield. Epictetus taught that people can only disturb you with what you allow inside. Their emotions are theirs, their judgments are theirs, their anger, their disappointment, their opinion, none of it belongs to you unless you invite it in. Emotional boundaries are not walls, they are gates, and you choose what passes through. Let's step into a moment that reveals this clearly. Imagine someone snapping at you on a stressful day. Without boundaries, your mind immediately interprets it as personal. What did I do? Why are they treating me this way? You absorb their tone, their frustration, their chaos. You carry it home. You replay it. You let it shape your mood, your thoughts, even your sense of worth. But with boundaries, something different happens. You pause, you breathe, and you remind yourself, this emotion belongs to them, not me. The moment loses its power. The sting dissolves. What felt personal becomes impersonal. Their storm no longer enters your sky. At this stage, boundaries begin to feel less like defense and more like clarity. You realize that empathy does not require absorption, that caring does not require overgiving, that understanding someone does not mean inheriting their burden. When you mistake emotional openness for emotional responsibility, you drown in what others were meant to carry themselves. I once knew a woman who spent years trying to fix everyone around her. She felt every stress, carried every sadness, absorbed every disappointment. She believed this made her kind. But slowly, it drained her until she no longer knew which emotions were hers and which belonged to the people she kept rescuing. One day, she said something that stayed with me. I finally realized I wasn't helping anyone. I was just drowning with them. That is what happens when boundaries break. We mistake collapse for compassion. Here's where the Stoic lesson sharpens. A strong mind knows how to stand beside someone's pain without stepping inside it, knows how to listen without losing itself, knows how to care without being consumed. This is emotional sovereignty, and sovereignty requires boundaries. Now imagine practicing this in your daily life. You notice your mood shift suddenly. You pause. You ask, does this belong to me? A simple question, but a powerful cut through the noise. If the answer is no, you release it. You return to your center. You stop internalizing the weather of people who never learned to regulate their own storms. From here, something remarkable begins to happen. You become grounded. You become steady. You become the person who remains calm, not because the world is calm, but because you are. Chaos stops entering you. Negativity stops sticking to you. People's moods stop shaping the geography of your mind. You respond instead of absorb. You observe instead of inherit. At this stage, emotional boundaries become one of your greatest strengths. You stop reacting to everything. You stop trying to fix everyone. You stop allowing others to define your worth through their behavior. And slowly, you reclaim what so many people lose: their inner space. The quiet place where your mind can breathe without interruption, where your thoughts belong to you, where your peace is not borrowed, but built. Here's a truth few are taught, but all emotionally strong people learn. Not every emotion around you deserves a home inside you. As we move toward the next chapter, remember this: you are not required to carry what is not yours. Boundaries are not distance, they are dignity. And the person who protects their inner space walks through the world with a calm no one can steal. Advancing to the 9th chapter, imagine this. You wake up, and before your mind has fully returned, the world has already begun pulling at you. News, opinions, messages, expectations, a storm of noise demanding that you react, respond, agree, worry, hurry. By midday, you feel stretched thin, as if every piece of you is being claimed by something outside of you. And somewhere inside, quietly, you feel yourself slipping out of your own hands. Now imagine watching yourself from a small distance. Not detached from life, but freed from the grip of everything that tries to own your attention. Have you ever noticed how quickly we get overwhelmed, not because life is unbearable, but because we try to hold what was never ours to hold? A comment, a rumor, a stranger's opinion, a misunderstanding, and suddenly these small external events become storms inside your chest. We suffer not from the noise itself, but from the belief that the noise demands our emotional participation. Here's where the Stoic lesson shifts everything. Mental detachment, not apathy, not indifference, but a disciplined ability to remain present without being pulled under, to witness life without drowning in it. Epictetus reminded us, you cannot control what others say or think about you. You can only control how you respond. That sentence, simple as it is, draws a boundary between your mind and the world's chaos. A boundary most people never realize they're allowed to have. Let's step into a moment you may recognize. Someone criticizes you unfairly. The words sting. Your instinct is to defend, explain, react. But before you even speak, the impact is already inside you. Your peace is shaken. Your worth feels questioned, and your day shifts direction because someone else's emotional turbulence entered your inner space. But imagine if, in that same moment, you paused, you heard the criticism, you acknowledged it, but you didn't absorb it. You told yourself, this belongs to them, not me. The weight falls away, your center remains intact, their judgment doesn't get to rewrite your identity. That is the power of mental detachment. Here's where the practice deepens. Detachment means stepping back far enough to see events as they are, not as your fear paints them. It means realizing that not every situation deserves a reaction, that not every voice deserves an answer, that not every problem deserves your peace. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the mind becomes unstoppable when it learns to stand apart from the disturbances around it. Not because the world calms down, but because the mind no longer chases every wave that rises. At this stage, something begins to change inside you. You stop being available to every disturbance. You stop being enslaved by the urgency of others. You stop tying your happiness to the unpredictability of external events. You begin asking yourself the question that anchors emotional strength. Is this within my control? If the answer is no, you release it. Not later, not tonight, now. Release becomes clarity. Clarity becomes power. I once watched a man receive harsh criticism in a meeting. Everyone expected him to fight back. You could see the tension around the room. But he didn't react. He didn't match the tone. He didn't collapse into hurt or explode into anger. He simply listened, nodded once, and calmly said, "Thank you. I'll consider what's useful and leave the rest." The entire room shifted. Not because he won, but because he stayed sovereign, detached. His peace remained his, and that alone commanded respect. Here's the truth hidden in that moment. The person who can remain calm when the world is loud becomes someone others cannot easily manipulate. Detachment turns you from reactive to deliberate, from tangled to grounded, from overwhelmed to aware. You begin living from intention rather than emotional reflex. Now imagine practicing this with the small things first. A passive-aggressive comment, a stressful message, someone rushing you, someone projecting their fear onto you. You breathe, you step back, you ask yourself, does this require my involvement? Does this deserve my peace? Most of the time the answer is no, and in that no, you reclaim hours of emotional energy you once lost without noticing. From here, mental detachment expands. You learn not to tie your self-worth to praise or criticism, not to cling to outcomes you cannot control, not to chase validation that was never yours to begin with. You begin to live in the present moment, fully, without being consumed by the unpredictable emotional weather around you. Life feels lighter, not because it becomes easier, but because you stop carrying every weight that brushes against you. At this stage, you become someone different, someone clear-minded, someone steady, someone who listens without absorbing, someone who observes without drowning, someone who responds with intention rather than impulsive survival. This is the kind of strength the Stoics considered true mastery, not the power to control the world, but the power to remain unshaken within it. So, let this chapter settle deeply. You don't need to react to everything. You don't need to fix everything. You don't need to carry everything. The moment you detach from what isn't yours, you return to yourself. And that return is the beginning of unshakable emotional strength. Entering the 10th chapter, picture this. The morning light touches your room, soft and quiet, and for a brief second, the day feels untouched, a blank page, waiting for the mark you choose to place upon it. But before you make that choice, the world rushes in. Notifications, obligations, routines you never question, and just like that, the day begins not with intention, but with momentum that doesn't belong to you. You're awake, yet not truly living, moving, yet not truly choosing. Now imagine stopping the rush right there, before you answer anything, before you fall into your usual rhythm. Have you ever noticed how easily a day is lost the moment you let it decide its own direction? You drift, you react, you accomplish tasks, but not meaning. You end the day exhausted yet strangely unfulfilled, wondering where your time went and why none of it seemed to matter. This quiet emptiness isn't from doing too little. It's from doing without intention. Here's where the Stoic clarity enters like a steady hand on the shoulder. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself every morning of the kind of man he intended to be. Not the tasks he needed to complete, but the values he wanted to uphold. Purpose to the Stoics wasn't a grand calling whispered from the heavens. It was a daily decision, a simple commitment to live deliberately rather than sleepwalking through the hours. Let's step into that idea more deeply. Picture yourself at the start of a new day. Instead of letting the tide pull you, you choose one thing, one intention, one anchor. Something small enough not to overwhelm you, yet clear enough to guide you. Maybe it's patience, maybe it's learning, maybe it's caring for your body, maybe it's completing a single meaningful task. That one choice sharpens your mind. It gives your actions weight. It turns your day from something that happens to something you shape. I once knew a man who set a single purpose each morning. Not a list. Not a burden, just one intention. Some days it was stay calm under pressure. Other days it was speak kindly. On especially difficult days, it was simply end today, knowing I acted with integrity. Over time, that practice transformed him. His life didn't become easier, he became clearer, stronger, more anchored. He told me, when I choose my purpose in the morning, I stop letting the world choose it for me. That line stayed with me. Here's where the habit begins to reveal its deeper strength. A daily purpose doesn't just organize your actions, it organizes your mind. It pulls your thoughts into alignment with your values. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The happiness of your life depends on the quality of your thoughts." And what is a daily purpose, if not the act of choosing the quality of your thoughts before the world can choose them for you? At this stage, something subtle but powerful shifts inside. You stop scattering your attention across dozens of unimportant tasks. You stop being seduced by urgency. You stop spending your energy on things that exhaust you but don't nourish you. Instead, you pour your effort where it truly matters. One purpose at a time, one day at a time, and slowly your life begins to take the shape of the intentions you've set. Now imagine the end of that day. Instead of feeling drained and vague, you feel anchored. You feel a sense of completion, not because you did everything, but because you did the thing that mattered. That small victory reinforces emotional strength. It reminds you that you are not powerless, that you are not drifting, that you can influence the shape of your own life through deliberate thought and deliberate action. Here's another quiet truth. Purpose doesn't need to be monumental. It doesn't need to impress anyone. It doesn't need to be something you announce. Sometimes your purpose is simply today, I will not betray myself. Sometimes it is today, I will be present. Sometimes it is today, I will give my best to the task in front of me. What matters is not the grandeur. What matters is the intention. From here, the practice becomes a way of living. You wake with direction instead of drifting. You act with clarity instead of impulse. You meet challenges with purpose instead of panic. You approach your day as something sacred, something that deserves your awareness, not your autopilot. And each day shaped this way becomes a brick in the foundation of emotional resilience. At this stage, you begin to understand what the Stoics knew all along. A strong life is not built in years. It is built in days, quiet, intentional days. Days guided by purpose rather than pressure. Days where you choose your direction rather than surrender to whatever demands your attention first. So let this chapter settle into you. Tomorrow morning, before the world calls your name, ask yourself one question that carries the power of every Stoic teaching. What is my purpose for today? Not what others expect, not what fear demands, not what habit dictates. Your purpose. Because the moment you choose your why, the day becomes yours to shape rather than something that shapes you. And as those practices begin to weave themselves into your days, something inside you starts to shift. You feel more anchored, less reactive. The noise around you no longer storms through you the way it once did. You stand a little steadier, breathe a little deeper, observe a little clearer. But emotional strength doesn't stop at stability. Stability is only the ground beneath your feet. From here, the path bends inward again, not to revisit what you've already learned, but to sharpen it, to see the patterns beneath your reactions, to understand the forces that rise quietly within you, long before the world ever touches them. The deeper you see yourself, the less anything outside of you can shake you. And now we move into that deeper terrain together. As we step into this new chapter, picture a moment you've lived more times than you can count. Someone says a single sentence, a tone shifts, a memory surfaces, and suddenly your heart tightens as if struck from the inside. No danger, no threat, just an unseen trigger pulling you into an old emotional pattern before you can name it. It feels like being ambushed by something you carry but rarely understand. This is where emotional strength is won or lost, not in the event, but in the unseen root beneath it. Now, imagine that feeling rising inside you, a tension in the chest, a subtle burn in the stomach, a sudden heaviness that doesn't match the moment. Have you ever wondered why certain situations hit you harder than they should? Why one comment feels like an attack while another rolls off your back? Why some moments make you overreact, defend, withdraw, or break? These reactions don't come from the present. They come from echoes of the past. And until you understand the source of those echoes, the world will always have the power to steer your emotions without your permission. Here's where the Stoics bring the torch into the dark. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the mind becomes stronger when it examines the impressions that strike it, not when it avoids them, not when it explains them away, when it looks directly at them with steady eyes. Emotional triggers are simply impressions that have gone unexamined, shadows that gain power because they move faster than our awareness. Let's step closer into a moment that reveals the truth. Imagine someone dismissing your opinion in a conversation. To them, it's nothing, a passing moment. But inside you, something ignites. Your pulse rises, your chest tightens. You feel a sting that doesn't match the situation. That sting is the echo. The reaction is the residue of an old wound, a time when being ignored meant being unseen, undervalued, or unprotected. The present only touched it. The past supplied the pain. I once met a man who reacted with anger whenever someone gave him advice. Not because the advice was wrong, but because something inside him interpreted guidance as control. One day he admitted, "I'm not angry at them. I'm angry at the person who once silenced me." That sentence carried the weight of years he never examined, but in naming the trigger, he took his first step toward freedom. Awareness cracked the chain. Here's where this chapter deepens. You cannot master your emotions if you do not understand their origins. Stoicism is not about suppressing anything, it is about seeing everything clearly. Seneca said that wounds concealed cannot be healed, and emotional triggers are simply wounds we've been trained to hide. The moment you bring them into the light, the moment you stop looking away, they lose their power to hijack your reactions. Now imagine approaching your triggers with curiosity instead of shame. Instead of asking, "What's wrong with me?" you ask, "Where is this coming from?" Instead of collapsing into the emotion, you trace its steps. You observe, you breathe, you name the sensation instead of drowning in it. This is not avoidance, it is mastery. It is the beginning of emotional sovereignty. At this stage, you begin to see patterns you were blind to before. The way you respond to criticism, the way you react to silence, the way you tense at confrontation, the way you shrink at rejection. These are not random, they are maps. And once you follow the map, you discover the root, the true source of each reaction. And the truth is always simpler than the stories we build around it. You are not broken. You are unexamined. Let's step into a second story. A woman tells me she becomes withdrawn whenever someone raises their voice. She thought she was simply sensitive until she connected it to childhood moments when raised voices meant danger, instability, unpredictability. The present was innocent, the past was loud, and once she saw the link, the reaction softened. Awareness became the barrier between her and the trigger. She didn't stop feeling, she stopped being ruled. Here's where the Stoic discipline becomes a tool. The next time a strong emotion hits, you pause. You anchor yourself the way Epictetus taught, by separating the impression from the interpretation. You say to yourself, "This is an impression, not the truth, not my identity, just a passing spark." And in naming it, you weaken its grip. You create space, you create breath, you create choice. From here, emotional triggers stop feeling like explosions and start feeling like signals. A signal that says, there is something inside you asking to be understood. A signal that reveals where you still need healing. A signal pointing toward growth, not weakness. When you see your triggers as teachers, not threats, you begin to stand taller inside your own mind. At this stage, something extraordinary begins to shift. You no longer fear the emotions that once dominated you. You no longer tremble at familiar patterns. You no longer assume the worst about yourself when something old resurfaces. Instead, you meet these moments with clarity. You breathe into them. You observe them like a calm watcher, and the watcher is always stronger than the wave. Now imagine living from this place of awareness. Someone criticizes you, and instead of collapsing, you stay grounded. Someone withdraws, and instead of spiraling, you stay centered. Someone disapproves, and instead of shrinking, you remain whole. Because now you understand the root. The trigger loses its mystery, the emotion loses its force, and you reclaim the piece of yourself you once gave away. So let this chapter settle into your bones. Awareness is armor. Clarity is strength. Understanding your triggers is the first step toward never being controlled by them again. And as you move forward, you'll see that the truth you uncover inside yourself becomes the freedom you walk with in the world. Moving into the next chapter, picture this. You are standing at the threshold of your own mind, and for a brief second, everything feels still. Not peaceful, but suspended, as if the world is holding its breath around you. This is the space that appears right after you've uncovered your deepest triggers, the raw territory where awareness sharpens, but clarity has not yet settled. It is here, in this in-between place, that the Stoics learned to prepare themselves long before life could strike. Now imagine the day ahead of you like a vast landscape you must cross. You know storms will come. You know unexpected challenges will rise. You know pressure, criticism, uncertainty, and disappointment will test you when you least expect it. And if you wait for the chaos to arrive before strengthening your mind, you will always be one step behind your own reactions. Emotional strength does not begin in the moment of impact. It begins in the quiet, invisible preparation long before the moment arrives. Here's where the ancient practice of mental rehearsal enters with power. The Stoics called it the art of anticipating hardship, training the mind to walk through difficulty before the world ever delivers it. Seneca urged himself to imagine setbacks, losses, disruptions, and discomforts, not to frighten himself, but to become immune to surprise. He believed that the mind grows stronger when it visits what it fears in advance. Not to suffer twice, but to suffer less. Let's step into this idea more closely. You wake in the morning, and instead of bracing against the unknown, you meet it with preparation. You tell yourself, today, someone may test my patience. Someone may misunderstand me. Something may go wrong. Not as pessimism, but as readiness. So when the moment arrives, your mind does not collapse into panic. It recognizes the terrain. It has walked here before, and because of that, you remain steady. I once knew a man who used this exact practice. Every morning he would pause for 1 minute and imagine 3 challenges: someone disrespecting him, a plan falling apart, and a moment of personal weakness. Not to attract negativity, but to disarm it. He told me, "When it happened, I felt less attacked and more prepared. It didn't shock me, it didn't break me. It simply arrived, and I met it like something I already understood." That is what preparation does. It dissolves the element of surprise, the very thing that magnifies suffering. Here's where the practice becomes deeper than rehearsal. Preparation is not about expecting the worst. It's about strengthening your inner walls so the world cannot breach them. Marcus Aurelius walked through each day knowing he would meet selfishness, arrogance, impatience, and ignorance. But he reminded himself, they cannot harm me unless I allow their nature to become my own. That line contains the entire essence of preparation. You do not fear what the world brings, because you have already built the character that can withstand it. At this stage, something inside you begins to shift. You no longer walk into your day hoping everything will go perfectly. You walk in knowing that even if nothing goes perfectly, you will remain intact. Preparation becomes freedom. Freedom from shock. Freedom from emotional collapse. Freedom from taking every difficulty as a personal insult. You become someone who expects turbulence but refuses to be thrown by it. Now, imagine preparing for emotional storms the same way a seasoned sailor prepares for rough seas, not with dread, but with skill. You anticipate frustration, so your temper softens. You anticipate disappointment, so your spirit stays light. You anticipate discomfort, so your resilience moves forward instead of backward. The Stoics believed that a mind trained in advance becomes untouchable in practice. From here, a new strength emerges. You begin noticing how often life's challenges felt unbearable simply because they caught you unprepared. How often anger rose because you expected ease. How often disappointment struck because you assumed the world owed you smoothness. Preparation dissolves these illusions, and without illusion, there is less to break you. This is where the practice evolves further. You prepare not only for external hardships, but for your own internal impulses. You anticipate moments when your patience will thin, when old wounds will stir, when tiredness will tempt you to act beneath your best self. You tell yourself, there may be moments today when I am weaker than I want to be, and when they come, I will meet them with awareness, not judgment. This is inner preparation, the kind that makes you someone who forgives themselves quickly, recovers quickly, adjusts quickly. That is emotional agility. And agility is strength. At this stage, you begin to notice that preparation creates a new kind of calm, a calm that does not depend on the world behaving. A calm that comes from the knowledge that no matter what arrives, you have already rehearsed the response. You have already chosen the version of yourself you want to bring into the moment. You have already agreed with your own values, and because of that, nothing external can easily drag you from them. Now imagine living this way consistently. Life still tests you, but the tests feel smaller. People still disappoint you, but your peace remains yours. Plans still fall apart, but you no longer fall apart with them. Because now you have become the kind of person who does not merely react to the world, you prepare for it. And preparation transforms chaos into something familiar, something manageable, something you can walk through without losing yourself. So let this chapter settle deeply. Strength is not the absence of hardship. Strength is the readiness to meet it. And when you train your mind before the world challenges it, you become someone life can push but never break. Advancing into the next chapter, picture yourself standing in a silent hallway inside your own mind. The doors around you are cracked open, each one holding a memory, an expectation, a version of you that once existed. Some doors you avoid, some you force shut, some you pretend you never saw. But here's the truth that eventually catches everyone who seeks emotional strength. You cannot grow past the parts of yourself you refuse to see. Now imagine walking forward as the floor beneath you shifts slightly, as if reminding you that every step into self-knowledge carries both discomfort and liberation. There is a moment in every person's life where they realize that the reactions that keep sabotaging them, the anger, the insecurity, the withdrawal, the perfectionism, the fear, are not random. They are not just the way you are. They are echoes of old wounds, of forgotten disappointments, of unmet needs, of stories you told yourself long before you learned to question them. The Stoics knew this well. Nothing changes until the source is brought into the light. Here's where the work deepens. You do not examine yourself to shame yourself. You examine yourself to reclaim yourself. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. So if your inner world has been painted by old pain, misunderstood failures, or judgments you inherited from others, this is where you begin to wash the surface clean and choose the colors consciously. Let's step into this with clarity. Every one of us carries an inner script, a default prediction about how the world will treat us and how we must respond. Some scripts were written in childhood. Some came from betrayal. Some were carved into us by life's sudden turns. But emotional strength requires rewriting the script, not blindly reciting it. You cannot build a steady inner world on a foundation you've never inspected. I once met someone who spent years believing they were always too much, too emotional, too intense, too demanding, too sensitive. They apologized for their very existence without realizing that this belief wasn't born from truth, but from the careless words of someone who lacked compassion. For years, that belief dictated their reactions. They shrank. They second-guessed themselves. They avoided connection. It wasn't until they finally sat with the question, whose voice is this actually, that they discovered the script wasn't theirs. It was borrowed. And once they recognized that, they began the slow, powerful work of returning it. At this stage, your task becomes simple but not easy. Observe the belief underneath the reaction. When you feel sudden anger, ask what wound it is protecting. When you shut down emotionally, ask what expectation you fear failing. When you crave approval, ask what part of you still thinks you must earn love. When you feel threatened by criticism, ask why someone else's words feel like a verdict instead of an opinion. This is where emotional strength transcends endurance and becomes awareness. Seneca taught that no wind is favorable to the sailor who doesn't know where he's sailing. In the same way, no amount of resilience matters if you do not understand what steers you from within. Awareness is the compass. Without it, you drift. With it, you choose your direction. Now imagine holding a mirror, not to judge yourself, but to study yourself with the same patience you'd offer a close friend. You look at the patterns without blaming. You look at the wounds without dramatizing. You look at the mistakes without inflating them into identity. That is the Stoic way. Sober, honest, grounded. A mind that sees itself clearly becomes a mind that cannot be manipulated by emotion, ego, or fear. There is power in naming what you carry, power in recognizing the beliefs that aren't yours, power in admitting this part of me needs healing instead of pretending it does not exist. The Stoics would call this the courage of introspection, the bravery to turn inward, not for punishment, but for liberation. Because when you finally understand why you react the way you do, the reaction loses its grip. It stops being instinct. It becomes a choice. From here, something subtle happens. You begin to outgrow the illusions that once held you hostage, the belief that you are unworthy, the fear of being misunderstood, the need to be perfect, the habit of anticipating rejection. These illusions slowly crumble as you uncover the inner narrative that created them. And once you see the narrative, you can rewrite it. At this stage, you start noticing a new space opening inside you, a calm distance between the trigger and the reaction. You feel the old emotion rising, but now you understand its root. You see it forming before it takes full shape. And in that moment of recognition, you gain the authority to choose differently. Instead of collapsing into old patterns, you respond from clarity. That is emotional sovereignty, not dominance, not suppression, sovereignty, the calm ownership of your inner world. Imagine how different your life becomes when the reactions that used to overwhelm you now become signals instead of threats. Anger becomes information, fear becomes insight, doubt becomes an invitation to look deeper, pain becomes a teacher. You stop fighting the parts of yourself you once feared, and you begin listening to them with wisdom. And the more you listen, the more you uncover a truth that most people never reach. The parts of you that once felt broken were never weaknesses. They were messages. Messages asking for attention, for understanding, for release. So let this chapter close with clarity. Self-awareness is not the act of exposing your flaws. It is the act of reclaiming your freedom. Because once you understand the hidden forces within you, nothing outside of you can control your path. And now we move forward to the next layer of your inner world, where the work becomes even more precise, and the strength you build becomes impossible to shake. Advancing into the next chapter, imagine a quiet evening settling over your life like a slow descent of dusk. The world outside grows softer, but inside something begins to stir, a recognition that every choice you make either strengthens or scatters you. This is where the journey turns toward discipline, not the discipline of force, but the discipline of alignment. The kind that makes you feel like your inner world finally matches the person you are trying to become. Now imagine this. You wake up one day and realize your life has been shaped not by what truly matters to you, but by everything that screamed the loudest. The demands of others, the expectations you never questioned, the habits you slipped into without noticing. It's a common story, too common. People drift not because they lack strength, but because they lack direction. They live responding instead of choosing, and nothing drains a person faster than giving their energy to what was never meant for them. Here's where the Stoic path becomes sharp and real. Marcus Aurelius wrote that if a thing is not necessary, do not do it. He wasn't talking about productivity, he was talking about freedom. He was telling us that emotional strength is not just about endurance or patience. It is about clarity. It is about refusing to waste your life on things that fracture your spirit. And clarity begins with ruthless honesty about what deserves your time. Let me tell you something I once witnessed. There was a man who spent years trying to please everyone around him. He said yes to every request, answered every message instantly, attended every event out of obligation, and filled every gap in his schedule with something that drained him. People praised him for being dependable, but inside he was crumbling. His days were full, yet he felt empty. The turning point came when he finally admitted that he was living the life others wanted, not the life he needed. And in that admission, he discovered power. He began removing commitments, declining invitations, setting boundaries, and prioritizing what truly mattered. For the first time in years, he felt alive, not busy, alive. At this stage, emotional strength requires the courage to reorganize your life around your values, not around pressure, not around noise, around values, the things you would fight to protect, the things that make your days meaningful, the things you would never trade. Ask yourself, what do I give my energy to that leaves me weaker? And what small shift today could create a better life a year from now? Here's where the inner work becomes fierce. You must learn to differentiate between what is urgent and what is important. Urgent things shout. Important things whisper. Urgent things demand. Important things wait. The world will always tell you what needs attention now. but your values will tell you what deserves attention forever. Emotional strength comes from listening to the whisper, moving deeper. Imagine laying out your entire life on a table, your habits, your relationships, your goals, your routines, your dreams. Some pieces fit the life you want to live. Some pieces no longer do. Some pieces drain you quietly. Some strengthen you without applause. Your task is not to judge these pieces, but to arrange them with intention, to build a life that feels like it belongs to you. Seneca wrote that life is long if you know how to use it. But most of life is wasted on things we never paused long enough to evaluate. We give our years to obligations, our months to distractions, our weeks to other people's priorities, and then wonder why our days feel thin. Strength returns when we stop being pulled and start being guided from within. This is where you begin to say no without guilt. No to the duties that exhaust you. No to the expectations that suffocate you. No to the noise disguised as opportunity. And with every no, you create space for the one yes that will change your life. Because a single aligned yes is more powerful than 1,000 scattered efforts. Entering this stage, you'll notice something changing. You feel lighter, sharper, more deliberate. You start choosing how to spend your mornings instead of rushing through them. You choose who has access to your time. You choose how much energy you give to conflict, to comparison, to pressure. You begin to understand that your time is not just minutes on a clock. It is your life in pieces. And how you spend it is who you become. And the more intentional you become, the more your emotional strength solidifies. You stop being tossed by demands. You stop being drained by the unnecessary. You stop living on autopilot. Your life becomes a crafted path, not an accidental one. Let this chapter close on a truth worth remembering. A person who knows what truly matters becomes impossible to distract. And now we move forward to the next unraveling, where you will learn to master the subtle forces that quietly shape your emotional world from the inside out. Entering the next chapter, imagine a quiet light flickering inside you, the kind of light that appears only after you've spent enough time looking inward. It is soft, almost fragile, yet unmistakably present, like the first glow before sunrise. This is where the work shifts once more, not toward control and not toward discipline, but toward recognition. Recognition of what is already good in your life, what is already steady, already whole, already worthy, long before the world gives it permission. That light does not ask for applause. It asks only that you notice it. And the moment you do, something inside you begins to realign. Now imagine walking through a familiar room, one you've passed through countless times without truly seeing it. But today, for reasons you can't quite explain, you stop. Your eyes slow down. You notice a small photograph you never paused to appreciate, a gift someone gave you years ago, the quiet comfort of a chair worn into your shape, the warmth in your chest when you remember things you once believed would break you, but didn't. These moments have always been there, waiting. Yet you walked past them because your mind was trained to search for what was missing instead of what was present. And that is the quiet tragedy of so many lives. People drown in what they lack while standing knee-deep in everything they once prayed for. Here's where the Stoic path becomes unexpectedly profound. Seneca wrote that nothing is more honorable than a grateful heart. To him, gratitude wasn't a soft emotion. It was armor, protection against envy, against despair, against the illusion that fulfillment lives somewhere outside the present moment. Gratitude is not a mood, it is clarity. The clarity to see what remains instead of being blinded by what is missing. And as your journey deepens, gratitude shifts from something you occasionally practice to something you perceive through. It becomes a way of moving through your life, a discipline, a quiet strength. Consider this turning point. Gratitude is no longer about counting blessings. It becomes the lens through which you interpret your reality. You begin to see the steady things that have held you together in moments you felt like collapsing. You notice that your morning routine, once rushed and dismissed, carries a kind of peace that anchors you. You realize that some friendships, even the quiet ones, have been the scaffolding of your entire emotional world. You notice that certain challenges shaped your character in ways comfort never could. Gratitude trains your mind to stop expecting life to be extraordinary before you allow yourself to feel joy. Instead, it teaches you to see the extraordinary hidden inside the ordinary. Let me share something that stays with me. There was a woman who spent years believing she had nothing, no progress, no success, no proof that her life was moving forward. Her mind had been trained to catalogue every misstep and overlook every quiet victory. She lived in a fog of not enough. But one evening, in an unexpected moment of stillness, she whispered a single question to herself. What has stayed with me? That question cracked something open. She began to see the friend who never abandoned her, the strength shaped by storms she never told anyone about, the skill she built slowly over time, the body that kept moving even on days her spirit didn't want to. She realized she had been walking not through a wasteland, but a garden. She simply never looked down long enough to see the roots holding her up. That is gratitude when practiced as a Stoic discipline. It returns you to the truth that you are richer than your mind admits. From here, the work becomes gentler, but never weaker. You take stock of your life without comparison. You observe your days through a clearer lens. You become aware that every emotion you feared becomes lighter when balanced with gratitude. Fear shrinks when you remember what has carried you this far. Anger softens when you see how much is still intact. Sadness becomes a point of understanding rather than collapse. Gratitude doesn't erase difficulty, it places it back into proportion. And proportion is power. Marcus Aurelius practiced this relentlessly. In his private reflections, he thanked not only his teachers and his opportunities, but also his challenges, his critics, and his hardships. Gratitude turned adversity into instruction rather than injury. That is the deepest transformation, when your gratitude is so steady that it reframes the very nature of struggle. As you grow, emotional strength becomes less about endurance and more about perception. Strength becomes the capacity to see clearly. Gratitude sharpens that clarity. It reminds you that life has been giving to you far more than it has taken. It reveals patterns of goodness that once went unnoticed. And every time you recognize what is good, your inner world stabilizes just a little more. Stability becomes resilience. Resilience becomes peace. You begin imagining a different way of meeting difficulty. Imagine facing a setback, but immediately remembering three things that ground you. Imagine disappointment rising in your chest, but being softened by the awareness of everything that remains untouched. Imagine your mind refusing to spiral because it's trained to identify what is steady before reacting to what is shaken. That is not delusion. That is mastery. This is where gratitude becomes simple and powerful. You pause, breathe, and acknowledge, not because life is perfect, but because even imperfect life holds moments of quiet fortune. You ask yourself, what am I standing on that hasn't collapsed? What has carried me farther than I realize? What would I miss if it disappeared tomorrow? Questions like these reopen the heart. They make you more grounded, less reactive, less hungry for validation, less threatened by comparison. Gratitude becomes a shield, soft but unbreakable. Slowly, you transform. Your reactions soften. Your worries shrink. Your envy evaporates. Your sense of meaning returns. You stop waiting for the world to change before you allow yourself to feel whole. Gratitude becomes a place you return to, not a feeling you hope for. And as this chapter draws to its quiet close, let this truth settle into you. A grateful mind becomes an unbreakable mind. Because a person who remembers what is good will never be defeated by what is missing. And from here, the path leads naturally toward another transformation. The moment you begin releasing the burdens that still cling to you, discovering how light your life becomes when you stop carrying what was never meant to stay. Advancing into this next chapter, picture yourself standing at the edge of a cliff at dawn. The world below is still dark, but the sky above holds the first thin line of light. It is a moment suspended between what has passed and what is becoming. A moment where you feel the weight of everything you've carried and the quiet invitation to finally set some of it down. This is where the journey leads now, not toward gaining more strength, but toward releasing the heaviness that keeps your strength from rising. Now, imagine holding a stone in your palm. At first, it feels small, manageable, something you can endure without much effort. But as the minutes pass and your arm grows tired, the strangest thing happens. The stone doesn't change, yet its weight becomes unbearable. That is how emotional burdens work. Not dramatic, not loud. They simply linger long enough to exhaust you. Old resentment, old guilt, old expectations. Old versions of yourself you no longer wish to be. You carry them because you think you should, because letting them go feels like surrender, because some part of you believes that holding on protects you. But the truth is simple: you cannot travel far while gripping the very things that anchor you to the past. Here's where the Stoic path becomes profoundly liberating. The Stoics never taught us to forget our pain or erase our memories. They taught acceptance. They taught release. They taught the courage to stop clinging to what cannot be changed. Epictetus wrote that freedom begins the moment you stop wishing for things to be different. Not because resignation is noble, but because acceptance gives you back the power to act. Every burden you release returns a piece of your strength. Let's step into this with both honesty and gentleness. Every person carries something that no longer serves them. For some, it's the bitterness from a betrayal long past. For others, it's the echo of someone's harsh words that convinced them they weren't enough. Some carry regret like a shadow. Some carry the illusion that they must remain who they once were. And some carry the fear that if they let go, they will lose a part of themselves. But the truth is deeper. What you release does not erase you. It reveals you. I once knew someone who proudly claimed they had moved on from a painful chapter in their life. They spoke of it with distance, with calm, with the confidence of someone who believed the past no longer had a hold on them. But every time life brushed against the same old wound, even lightly, they reacted with anger or withdrawal or shame. It wasn't the event that still hurt them. It was their refusal to let go of the meaning they had attached to it. They had healed the memory, but kept the burden. It wasn't until they finally whispered to themselves, "I do not need to carry this anymore," that the weight loosened. And with that release came a strength they never knew they had. At this stage, letting go becomes a discipline of clarity, not denial, not suppression. It is the recognition that your past cannot walk into your future unless you invite it. It's the understanding that your identity is not defined by what hurt you, but by what you choose from this point forward. You are not the moment that broke you. You are the moment you decided to rise. Here's where the work deepens. Letting go requires confronting the quiet truth beneath every burden, that holding on often feels safer than facing the unknown. Anger keeps you from feeling sadness. Control keeps you from feeling vulnerable. Old stories keep you from rewriting new ones. But emotional strength demands that you step into the unknown anyway, because the unknown is where freedom lives. Marcus Aurelius understood this well. He wrote that loss is simply change, and change is the nature of the universe. To him, what feels like an ending is simply the next stage of becoming. When you let go, you do not lose. You transform. You make space for what was meant for you all along. Now, imagine releasing something you've gripped for years. Picture the feeling, not just relief, but expansion. Not just stillness, but clarity. Letting go is not an ending. It is an unburdening. It is the moment you stop negotiating with your past and begin investing in your future. It is the moment you stop rehearsing the hurt and start practicing the freedom that has been waiting behind it. From here, something subtle but powerful begins to shift. You start noticing how much lighter your steps feel. You realize you can breathe deeper. You see how much of your energy was tied to things that gave nothing back. And with every burden released, your emotional strength grows. Not because you became harder, but because you became freer. Letting go also opens your relationship with yourself. You stop being at war with your memories. You stop punishing yourself for who you were when you were hurting. You stop replaying failures as if they define you. A new conversation begins inside you, one rooted in compassion, in understanding, in the quiet wisdom that says, "I have survived more than I ever gave myself credit for." At this point in your journey, letting go becomes less about what you release and more about who you become without the weight. You begin choosing peace over resentment. You choose presence over nostalgia. You choose possibility over regret. And you realize that letting go is not the act of forgetting the past. It is the act of refusing to let the past define your worth. As you walk deeper into this chapter, let one truth settle into you like a stone sinking gently into still water. You are allowed to stop carrying what harms you, not because life demands it, not because others recommend it, but because your strength deserves it. And as this chapter finds its quiet ending, your path opens again toward the next transformation, where you will learn not only to release what burdens you, but to build the inner architecture that keeps your peace protected no matter what unfolds around you. Advancing into this new chapter, imagine walking through a doorway that closes softly behind you. The air feels different here, quieter, heavier, as if you've stepped into a room where every distraction has been stripped away and only the truth remains. This is where your attention becomes a force, not a reaction, a blade instead of a blur. A mind no longer pulled apart by noise, but guided by direction. And the journey now asks you to build something essential, the ability to focus your energy with precision instead of letting the world scatter it for you. Now imagine this scene. You sit down at your desk with a clear intention, just one. Something meaningful, something you know will move your life forward, even a small step. But before your hand even reaches for the first action, your phone lights up. Notifications rise like sparks. Someone needs you. Something feels urgent. A message grabs your attention. A thought intrudes. A memory pulls you sideways. In less than 30 seconds, your purpose dissolves, and the day begins carrying you instead of the other way around. This is not a personal flaw. It is the natural consequence of a life lived without inner hierarchy, without direction, without command. Here's where the Stoic path cuts through the fog. Marcus Aurelius wrote that your mind takes the shape of whatever you consistently give it, and the modern world demands your attention the way gravity demands falling. If you do not decide what matters, everything will. Emotional strength is not only about resilience or calm, it is the capacity to direct your energy toward the few things that actually build your life, instead of the countless things that exhaust it. At this stage, the discipline becomes choosing one essential task each day and protecting it like a fire in the wind. You carve a sacred space around your focus. You treat your attention as a resource. You stop giving it away like loose change. Because every moment you spend on something meaningless is a moment stolen from something that could have changed you. I once knew a man who was always tired, though he didn't understand why. He worked hard, but nothing meaningful progressed. He tried new habits, but none stayed. He wanted growth, yet every day felt identical to the last. One evening, in frustration, he wrote down everything he gave his attention to over the course of a single day. And when he looked at the list, he finally understood. It wasn't that he had no energy. It was that he leaked it. 10 minutes here, 15 minutes there, a scroll, a distraction, a tiny argument, a thought spiral. By the end of the day, he had poured himself into 1,000 cracks, and nothing remained. This is where the work sharpens into something transformative. You begin to recognize that attention is life force, and you must spend it with intention. If something drains you, you adjust your boundary. If something distracts you, you create distance. If something interrupts your clarity, you remove its access. This is not harshness. It is stewardship. It is choosing not to betray yourself with constant fragments. From here, focus becomes a form of self-respect. Not perfection, not rigidity, respect. You start by minimizing the small fractures in your day. You silence what pulls you sideways. You refuse the pull of every notification. You stop treating every request as a command. You learn to delay responding, to let the world wait while you finish what you began. Seneca warned that we allow others to steal our time even more willingly than our money. A thief who steals your wealth takes something external. A thief who steals your focus takes something internal. Imagine how different your days would feel if your energy moved in one direction instead of 50. Imagine doing fewer things, but with actual power behind them. Imagine feeling your mind return to you, whole, concentrated, sharp. This is the foundation of profound emotional strength, a centered inner life that no longer scatters itself at the first pull of obligation or impulse. At this stage, your relationship with distraction changes. You stop blaming yourself. You stop calling it laziness or weakness. You realize distraction is not a failure of willpower, it is a lack of clarity. A mind without a chosen priority will always surrender to the nearest impulse. The moment you choose what matters most, distraction loses its throne. Now imagine setting one intention each morning, not a long list, not a dozen goals, just one. A single anchor. You protect it, you return to it, you finish it. And your days begin to accumulate meaning. Your confidence grows, your identity shifts. You stop feeling behind, you stop feeling scattered, you stop feeling like you're always starting over. Focus becomes momentum. Momentum becomes identity. Identity becomes destiny. Let me share something quietly powerful. There is a point where focus becomes not just a discipline, but a sanctuary, a place where the noise of the world cannot penetrate, where your mind is no longer fragile, where your purpose feels like a pulse moving through you. You feel stronger not because life has changed, but because you have finally chosen where to place your energy. And here's the truth that carries you forward. A distracted mind is a vulnerable mind. A focused mind is an unshakable one. As this chapter folds into the next, let the lessons settle. Emotional strength is not built through tension or force, it is built through direction, through choosing what matters and refusing to betray that choice. Through gathering yourself instead of leaking yourself. Through giving your time only to what deserves your time. And now the path opens further into a new understanding of pressure, adversity, and the inner steadiness that allows you to move through storms without losing yourself. Entering this new chapter, imagine standing in the center of a crowded room while a storm of voices, expressions, and moods swirls around you, some cheerful, some heavy, some sharp enough to cut through your composure. And yet there is a small, steady flame inside you that refuses to be blown out. This is where the journey turns toward mastery of something subtle, invisible, and profoundly powerful. The ability to remain sovereign over your emotions, even while absorbing the presence of others. Not by shutting them out, not by hardening yourself, but by learning the art of emotional boundaries, the invisible lines that protect your inner space from the chaos of the world. Now, imagine the weight of someone else's frustration landing on your shoulders. A co-worker snaps at you and your stomach tightens. A loved one projects their fears and you feel responsible for fixing them. A stranger's irritation lingers in your mind long after the interaction ends. It happens quietly, almost imperceptibly. Without boundaries, people slip into your emotional house and rearrange your furniture without permission. And before you even notice, your peace becomes a reaction to their storms. Your mood becomes an echo of theirs. Your clarity becomes clouded by noise that was never yours to carry. Here's where the Stoic path reveals its wisdom with unmistakable clarity. Epictetus taught that we are disturbed not by the emotions of others, but by our decision to internalize them. Their anger belongs to them. Their anxiety belongs to them. Their disappointment belongs to them. The moment you invite their inner world into yours, you surrender the command of your own mind. But when you learn to distinguish what is yours from what is not, you reclaim your emotional sovereignty. At this stage, emotional boundaries are not walls. Walls disconnect. Boundaries clarify. They are the lines that say, I will stay compassionate, but I will not absorb what is not mine. I can listen, but I will not drown. I will walk beside you, but I will not carry your storm inside my chest. This is not coldness, it is maturity. It is understanding that if you allow everyone's emotions to take root in your mind, your inner world will never have space to grow. I once knew someone who spent every day absorbing the emotions of others like a sponge. When her partner was anxious, she was anxious. When her friends were overwhelmed, she carried their overwhelm as if it were her responsibility. When her co-workers were stressed, she internalized it so deeply that she stopped sleeping. She didn't know how to separate her identity from the moods around her. She thought absorption was empathy. But empathy without boundaries is self-erasure. It wasn't until she learned to ask one question, does this emotion belong to me, that her life began to change. She discovered that she could care without collapsing. She could support without sacrificing. She could love without losing herself. From here, the emotional work becomes deeply transformative. You begin to see that many of your reactions were never truly yours. They were inherited from proximity, from pressure, from habit. Someone else's disappointment became your guilt. Someone else's stress became your tension. Someone else's insecurity became your silence. Boundaries remove the confusion. They allow you to return each emotion to its rightful owner, freeing you to respond with clarity rather than absorb out of reflex. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the mind should stand straight, not be held straight. Emotional boundaries give you that posture. They allow you to walk through a world full of unpredictable moods and remain steady. You realize you do not have to answer every emotional invitation. You do not have to join every tension. You do not have to carry the burden of someone else's inner turbulence. You can observe without absorbing. You can care without collapsing. You can support without sinking. Now, imagine yourself in a conversation where someone unloads their frustration. Instead of immediately feeling responsible or tense, you pause internally. You breathe. You remind yourself, this belongs to them. That single thought becomes a shield, not against compassion, but against contamination. You remain open, but not vulnerable to emotional takeover. You stay grounded in your own clarity, not swept into their storm. This is not avoidance. It is the discipline of remaining present without being consumed. At this stage, boundaries also illuminate relationships. You start seeing who respects your emotional space and who intrudes, who communicates and who dumps, who seeks support and who seeks to offload responsibility. You realize that some people do not need your emotional labor. They need your calm clarity. Others need your guidance, but not your absorption. And some need distance, because closeness to them comes at the cost of your peace. This awareness reshapes your interactions. You speak with more intention. You listen with more wisdom. You choose what to allow inside your emotional house. And slowly, your inner world becomes cleaner, quieter, steadier. You stop being pushed around by every ripple of external emotion. You begin to feel the strength of someone who can sit in a storm without letting a single drop reach their core. Let's step deeper. Emotional boundaries also guard you against manipulation, the subtle kind that disguises itself as urgency, guilt, pressure, or obligation. When someone attempts to pull you into their narrative, their fears, or their drama, boundaries allow you to see the attempt clearly. You stop reacting from emotion and begin responding from wisdom. The Stoics called this inner citadel, a protected center of the mind where logic, virtue, and clarity reside, untouched by external chaos. Imagine how powerful your life becomes when your inner citadel stands firm. You can interact with difficult people without losing yourself. You can engage with emotional situations without becoming overwhelmed. You can hear anger without matching it. You can face disappointment without collapsing into self-blame. You can stay balanced, even when others fall apart. This is not coldness, it is mastery. And as this chapter draws toward its quiet conclusion, let the lesson settle into your bones. You owe kindness to others, but you owe your peace to yourself. Emotional boundaries ensure you never confuse the two again. They protect your energy. They preserve your clarity. They guard the sacred space where your strength is forged. From here, the path leads naturally toward another dimension of mastery, where you learn how to meet adversity with inner steadiness, transforming pressure from something that breaks you into something that reveals you. Advancing into this next chapter, picture yourself stepping into a vast, open field just moments after a storm has passed. The air is sharp and clean, the ground still trembling from the weight of what moved through, and yet there is a strange stillness settling around you. This is where the world feels loud on the outside but strangely quiet within you. A moment where clarity rises from the debris. And this is where the journey turns toward one of the most powerful disciplines you will ever learn. The art of mental detachment, the ability to stay fully present without being swallowed by everything unfolding around you. Now imagine the weight of constant noise, the opinions, the expectations, the headlines, the disappointments, the comparisons, the endless stream of thoughts that arrive uninvited and insist on dictating your emotional state. In a world that demands your reaction every minute, the ability to stay centered becomes a rare strength. You've felt this before, the moment when someone criticizes you and your mind spirals, or when a failure whispers old fears into your ear, or when uncertainty grips you like a cold hand around the ribs. Without mental detachment, you become a prisoner of whatever emotion or moment shouts the loudest. Here's where the Stoics stood firm. Epictetus said that we are chained not by events, but by our interpretations of them. The world acts, but your mind decides what it means. And when you learn to detach, not withdraw, not numb yourself, but see things without letting them own you, you become untouchable in a quiet, powerful way. Mental detachment is not escape. It is clarity. It is the act of stepping back just enough to see the truth without losing yourself in the emotion of the moment. At this stage, detachment begins with a simple inner movement. You pause and create a gap between what happens and what you tell yourself about it. The moment the pressure rises, instead of reacting, you lean back in your mind and observe. You watch your thoughts without merging with them. You watch your emotions without assuming they are prophecies. You watch someone's judgment without treating it as a verdict. That gap, thin as a breath, is where freedom grows. I once knew a man who crumbled under every external pressure. If someone was disappointed in him, he felt worthless. If someone was angry, he felt responsible. If someone succeeded, he felt behind. His mind was a mirror for the world, reflecting every mood, every shift, every judgment. He had no inner anchor until he learned one practice that changed his life, the art of stepping back. Whenever he felt his emotions rising, he imagined himself watching the situation from across the room, not dissociating, observing. And slowly, his reactions transformed. Criticism no longer pierced him. Stress no longer controlled him. Conflict no longer drowned him. He had discovered a truth. Distance reveals reality far better than immersion. From here, detachment becomes a way of inhabiting your life with greater precision. You begin to understand that every emotion that rises in you is not a command, it is simply information. And information can be reviewed, questioned, accepted, or dismissed. Anger becomes a signal, not an explosion. Fear becomes a whisper, not a verdict. Sadness becomes a wave, not an identity. This is not suppression. This is mastery. It is the ability to feel without being ruled. Marcus Aurelius practiced this constantly. In his meditations, he reminded himself to remain above the noise, not in superiority, but in clarity, to rise to a vantage point where emotions shrink back into proportion. When you detach mentally, you shift from being inside the storm to watching it from the shore. You can feel the intensity, but you do not drown in it. Now imagine someone insulting you, their tone sharp, their words unfair. The old version of you reacts instantly, defensive, hurt, anxious. But this new version pauses. You create space. You observe the situation like a slow-motion replay. And in that observation, something becomes clear. The insult reveals more about their inner world than yours. Their anger belongs to them. Their bitterness belongs to them. Their insecurity belongs to them. And because you see it clearly, it does not enter you. This is freedom on a level most people never experience. At this stage, mental detachment becomes a shield against needless suffering. You stop absorbing every opinion. You stop trying to control every outcome. You stop letting fear dictate your choices. You remain present but unmoved by noise. You remain open but not vulnerable to manipulation. You remain compassionate but not consumed. Detachment gives you the ability to act from wisdom instead of emotional impulse. And here is the unspoken truth. Detachment is not coldness. It is warmth without fragility. It is the ability to stay kind even when others are unkind. It is the ability to stay steady even when life becomes chaotic. It is the ability to keep your center when the world tries to pull you off course. Nothing rattles a person more than someone who cannot be dragged into reaction. That is real power. Imagine how your life changes when every difficulty loses its ability to hijack your mind, when you experience disappointment but do not spiral, when someone disrespects you but you stay rooted in your dignity, when uncertainty arrives but you meet it with curiosity instead of panic. Detachment transforms pressure into perspective, and perspective is something no one can take from you. As this chapter draws to its quiet ending, let one truth settle deeply in you. The less you cling to every passing thought, the more control you have over your life. Because emotional strength is not built in moments of comfort, it is built in the quiet space between stimulus and response, where your inner world chooses clarity over chaos. And now the path continues forward toward the next insight, where your emerging strength becomes not just protection, but a foundation for a life lived with unshakable purpose and depth. Entering this final chapter, imagine standing at the threshold of a new morning. The world is still dim, the sky holding its breath before the light breaks. There is a kind of sacred quiet in the air, the kind that makes you realize that every new day is not just time passing, but time offered. A clean page, a new beginning. And in this hush, the journey turns toward a truth that the Stoics repeated endlessly. A person who wakes without intention lives someone else's life. But a person who chooses their purpose each morning becomes the author of their own existence. Now imagine yourself rising before the noise, before the messages, before the obligations reach for you. For a moment, there is no pressure, no past pulling at you, no future demanding anything. Only you and the question that shapes everything. What is my purpose today? Not a grand world-changing mission, not a list of tasks, but a single direction that aligns your mind, your values, and your actions. A guiding thread that keeps you from drifting into days that feel empty, scattered, or wasted. This is where the Stoic teaching becomes beautifully clear. Marcus Aurelius wrote every dawn about the person he intended to be. Calm, disciplined, honest, useful, steady. To him, purpose was not performance, it was alignment, a way of making sure he lived intentionally rather than reactively. And you feel it too. When you wake without intention, the world decides your day for you. You become a servant to urgency, to distraction, to the demands of others. But when you choose your why, even a single sentence, your mind sharpens, your heart steadies, your time becomes yours again. I once met someone who lived every day on autopilot. They woke, worked, responded, reacted, collapsed into bed, and repeated it all the next morning. They weren't lazy. They weren't unmotivated. They were simply directionless. Their life felt flat, Not because it lacked opportunity, but because it lacked intention. And then something shifted. One morning, during a moment of quiet reflection, they asked themselves, what would make today meaningful? That simple question changed the arc of their life. Suddenly, their days had shape, their actions had weight, their choices had depth. Purpose didn't give them more time, it gave their time meaning. At this stage, choosing a daily purpose becomes far more than productivity. It becomes a spiritual discipline, a way of grounding yourself in the person you are becoming. A way of reminding your mind where to return when life pulls it in every direction. Purpose acts as a compass. No matter how far you drift, it brings you back. It sharpens your clarity. It lifts your emotional strength, because when you know why you're moving, you stop being overwhelmed by the noise around you. Now imagine choosing a purpose that is simple but powerful. Today, I will grow stronger. Today, I will remain calm. Today, I will act with integrity. Today, I will move closer to the life I want. These are not tasks, they are directions. They are instructions for the mind, and the mind thrives with direction. Purpose offers focus, and focus becomes momentum. Momentum becomes identity. Before you know it, your life begins to take a different shape. One you crafted intentionally, not one you stumbled into. From here, watch how your emotional world shifts. Suddenly your reactions become more thoughtful because you have something to return to besides impulse. Your decisions become clearer because they align with the day's intention. Even your challenges feel different. Instead of threatening you, they test your commitment to your purpose. And every time you choose to stay aligned, you strengthen the muscle of self-mastery. Seneca wrote that life is long if you know how to use it. Purpose is how you use it. Not by filling your schedule, but by filling your day with intention. A purposeful day feels lived, not survived. It becomes a day you remember, not a day that blurs into the next. And emotional strength thrives in this space, in the space where your actions match your values, where your time reflects your priorities, where your choices build the person you aspire to be. Imagine this. You go to sleep at night knowing exactly what today meant, even if it was quiet, even if it was simple. You lived it consciously. You showed up with purpose. And that feeling, the feeling of alignment, becomes one of the strongest sources of inner peace you will ever experience. Because a life built from meaningful days becomes a meaningful life. At this stage, purpose becomes a daily ritual that resets you. It pulls you out of old patterns. It shields you from distraction. It reminds you that you are not here to drift. You are here to live with intention, to grow, to act, to become. Each day becomes a small act of self-authoring. Each morning a silent agreement with yourself. I will not waste this. And your days begin to add up, not as hours, but as steps toward the life that has been calling you. As we bring this chapter to its gentle close, let one truth sink into your bones. A purposeful day becomes a powerful life, because emotional strength is built not only in moments of crisis or triumph, but in the quiet, intentional mornings where you choose who you will be before the world attempts to choose for you. And from here, your path opens fully toward the life that waits on the other side of your daily intentions, shaped by your inner clarity, strengthened by your discipline, and anchored by the unwavering purpose you choose each new dawn. As we close today's journey, take a breath and let these 10 habits settle into you. Emotional strength is not built in sudden victories, but in quiet choices that shape you from within. Choose one habit to carry into this week and let it guide the way you respond, think, and grow. If you found value here, consider subscribing so we can keep walking this path together. And before you go, share a quick comment with the words "Stay strong" to anchor your intention. Your growth is already unfolding.